Have you ever wondered what's in Popeye's spinach that makes him so strong? Well, it turns out that it was nuclear waste this entire time. That's right, meaties. We've got a radioactive sailor man on the loose, and he's about to put the beatdown of a lifetime on the dumbest group of college kids since Camp Crystal Lake 1979. I hope you've been eating your greens, because we're here to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the spinach demon in Popeye the Slayer Man. Check game, right? Popeye here is about to open up a lot more than just a can of spinach. Late one night, we find this small-time criminal, Adrienne, running for her life from something in the fog. Thinking quickly, she decides to take cover inside of the abandoned spinach factory, but that was her biggest mistake, because her path gets cut off by a shadowy figure with absolutely enormous arms, forcing her to hide behind a nearby machine. These two dealers chase her inside, but one of the guys is incredibly nervous, saying how the place is supposed to be haunted. They eventually catch up with the girl after finding her hiding spot, but as they circle her in, they hear a strange slurping noise coming from the other side of the room, and an empty can of spinach rolls out of the shadows. Annoyed, Miguel goes to confront them when suddenly a massive pair of arms yanks him into the darkness, and all they can hear are the sounds of him being torn to shreds until he's thrown back to the floor with his guts spilling out of his body. That's when Popeye finally emerges, grabbing the pathetically tiny knife out of the other guy's hand and snapping his wrist like a toothpick as blood starts spurting out of the artery. Putting a hand to each side of his head, he effortlessly crushes the man's skull like a watermelon. And as she's cowering in fear, Adrienne shouts that he's a monster, but Popeye deadass replies, "I am what I am," before turning on her next. That makes 3 down with 11 more to go. Alright, so somebody should have really told these idiots that if you want to mess with Popeye, then you better be eating yo spinach. I mean, he just obliterated all 3 of these lowlifes without taking even the slightest amount of damage. And that's why if they were smart, then they never would have set foot inside this death maze in the first place. Although it's better than nothing, an abandoned factory isn't exactly the best place to hide out because you could easily end up getting trapped inside. They must have gone there by car, so instead of looking for shelter in the empty building, I would have tried to circle around, get back to the vehicle, and then escape the area entirely. But that's before you include the fact that it's supposedly home to a demonic sailor with arms the size of bazookas, and going in there when you've already heard the legends is just asking for trouble. This guy was such an NPC that we never even learned his name, but he was also the only one with any common sense, and if I were him, then I would have stopped chasing after Adrienne as soon as she entered the building. Now, once the sailor man started opening up a can of whoop-ass, there were 2 much better approaches that they could have taken. He's so strong that it's over right away if he's able to grab you, but as far as we know, he's still vulnerable to normal forms of damage. Let's say they worked together and fought as a team. They could have used their numbers as a distraction, with one person drawing aggro from Popeye while the others flanked to his sides and tried to take him down with an improvised weapon. Otherwise, we turn to the meat shield strategy, because remember, you don't have to be faster than Popeye to get away, you just have to be faster than the guy standing next to you. That's right. I don't know what Buddy was planning to do here with that little toothpick, or why he even thought Popeye would even care that he had a hostage, but while the sailor was busy pulverizing his skull, Adrienne here had every chance to run for the door and make her escape. Instead of taking the perfect opportunity to get the hell out of there, she disrespected him straight to his face, after he literally just got done saving her life. And now it looks like rotten spinach will be the last thing that she ever smells. Bon appetit. The next day, this film nerd, Dexter here, meets up with his best friend Lisa, trying to convince her to help out with his latest project. He's planning to shoot a documentary about the ghost of the Sailor Man, and he's already recruited his crush Olivia, but she isn't convinced until he mentions that his handsome friend Seth is coming along. That's good enough to get Lisa on board, and with the addition of their friend Katie, they're ready to explore the abandoned factory in search of any proof of the old urban legend. But little does he know that he's leading his friends straight into a death trap. At the factory, this real estate agent Margot arrives for a meeting with the building's owner, Mr. Alistair. there. They're working on a deal to demolish the property and replace it with luxury condos. And the owner here says that he'll be happy to see it gone, but before they finalize anything, her clients have a few concerns about the building's history. The factory isn't just run down, it's also known for being dangerously contaminated, and there are rumors going around that it might not be abandoned after all. Reassuring her that there's nothing to worry about, he reminds Margot here that she only gets paid if the sale goes through, so it's in her best interest to stop asking questions and tell her clients that the place is good to go. In fact, she's just about to agree with him when they both notice the unmistakable smell of pipe smoke coming from somewhere in the building. Annoyed, the owner goes to check it out, leaving Margot here to wait by herself. The place already gives her the creeps, but what she doesn't know is that she's being watched. That's when she hears someone heading her way, but when she calls for the owner, the man doesn't really respond, and terrified, she rushes to hide behind a nearby stack of wooden pallets. Jumping out, she knocks the man down as soon as he gets close, only to crash right into the owner as she runs for the exit. It turns out that it was just the security guard Angus, and after agreeing to meet at his office, he tells the man to search the property for any signs of an intruder, giving him permission to get rid of them by any means necessary. But this guy has no idea that it's about to be his last job on the night. The guard starts his patrol with a sweep through the building's storage areas, picking up a heavy pipe wrench, just in case he runs into any trouble. Just then, someone passes by at the other end of the hallway, and daring them to come out, he follows them up a flight of stairs to the second floor. Reaching the bathroom, he can hear the water running inside, but when he rips open the door, he's disgusted to find the mutilated bodies of the two dealers stacked against the wall. Stumbling back outside, he looks up only to find himself face to face with the sailor man, and Popeye simply cracks his knuckles as he gets ready to unleash another beatdown. Somehow, this idiot actually thinks that he stands a chance, but the sailor easily catches his attack and punches him straight in the jaw before hitting him with an uppercut so powerful that it lifts him off of his feet and sends him scrambling to the floor. Knocked senseless, there's nothing that he can do as Popeye looms over him with a pissed off look on his face, and lifting up his boot, he curb stomps him so hard that his entire skull explodes into hundreds of bloody fragments. That makes 4 down with 10 more to go. I don't know what was going through this guy's head, besides maybe Popeye's boot, of course, but Angus here obviously should have known better than to start beef with the spinach demon. The security guard here thought he was tough, but after seeing what the sailor man did to the others, his priorities should have instantly shifted from kicking ass to pure survival. You see, the problem with fighting Popeye isn't just that he's hopped up on radioactive spinach, it's that the spinach gives him strength of mythical proportions. Throughout his career, we've seen him go toe-to-toe with legendary figures like Hercules, rebuild an entire battleship, and even punch the sun itself, but even one of his most casual feats of strength, bending steel bars with nothing but his bare hands, already puts him into a superhuman category. That's right, a standard 1-inch thick steel bar has a tensile strength of around 550 megapascals. Where are all my engineers at? To bend it, you'd need several thousand foot-pounds of torque, and the strongest humans in the world can only generate about 500 foot-pounds using their entire body, making Popeye here at least 10 times stronger than the strongest bodybuilder. And that's only when he's using one hand. Needless to say, you don't win a fight with Popeye, you survive it. And that's why this guy's strategy was absolutely cooked from the start. You see, grabbing a weapon isn't just a good idea, it's basically essential, because it's pretty much the only way you'll do enough damage to stun him. But the problem was that Angus here chose his loadout before he knew what he was up against. Now, the wrench can deal a strong impact, but it forces you to get too close. So instead, I would have gone for something like a fire extinguisher, because it can still be used as a club, but you can also temporarily blind his ass with the spray if you need to, giving you a chance to escape. Now, I don't care how many security jobs he's had before, but if you're challenged by a guy with forearms that are as wide as your entire chest, it's not chickening out if you decide to run for your life, it's just being smart. Like, instead of going after him, I would have thrown the wrench as hard as I could straight at Popeye's head. then grab the cargo net from the crate behind him, throw it over Popeye's head to slow him down, and escape through that big, wide open door that was 10 feet away. Like, I'd rather have to look for a new job than end up splattered on the bottom of Popeye's shoe, so it's always better to run when you have the chance. Back in town, they stop by Katie's bar to make sure that she's still in for the night. If it all goes according to plan, then they're hoping to get some footage of the sailor man's ghost that supposedly haunts the property. But overhearing them, this salty sea dog in the corner here chimes in that the stories are actually true, warning them to stay far away from the factory if they value their lives. That's when her low-life boyfriend Joey walks in, and it's clear that she isn't exactly happy to see him. He's frustrated to hear that she's still going to the factory with Dexter and his friends, but she stands her ground and insists on sticking to her plans. Still, that doesn't stop him from getting aggressive for absolutely no reason, and they decide to get out of there before he causes any more trouble. But what they could never expect is that they're about to run into somebody who's even worse. Just before dark, they meet up with the others in front of the old spinach factory and get ready to head inside. The place looks ready to fall down at any minute, and as Olivia looks around, she catches a glimpse of Popeye watching them from one of the windows, but decides not to say anything about it to her friends. They hit their first roadblock before they've even set one foot in the building because the director here didn't realize that the door would be locked. But luckily, Olivia steps in to save the day. Borrowing a nail file from Katie, she's able to pick the lock without much effort, impressing her friends and clearing the way for them to get inside. As they're taking their first look around, they're startled by a phone call from Katie's boyfriend, but she declines it and sends him to voicemail instead. She might think it's a healthy boundary, but Joey here is absolutely furious, and it gets worse when his buddies start egging him on, saying how she's probably cheating on him with Dexter. He decides that he wants to go look for them at the factory, but only Terry here thinks that it's a bad idea. He's heard the stories of the ghostly sailor who's strong enough to fight 10 men at once, but his friends are convinced that it's just a story, and no matter how hard he tries to talk them out of it, these two won't give up until they've learned their lesson the hard way. Alright, these assholes are about to make a huge mistake, but for Dexter and his friends, it's actually good news that they're showing up. They're completely unprepared for what they're going to encounter inside, and even though they haven't run into the Sailor Man yet, he's already watching them, so it's only a matter of time before the bloodbath starts. I mean, even that random barfly chimed in to warn them that Popeye doesn't like visitors. Hold up, when your conversation triggers a threatening exposition dump from a random NPC, you need to take that seriously. And that's why if I were committing to the trip, then I would have made sure that we had the right equipment first. Now, one thing that they're not considering are the environmental hazards that have come from a place like this. This factory has been abandoned for over 20 years, and because of its location near the docks, it's quite possible that massive black mold colonies have already formed throughout the entire building. Shout out to my black mold colonies out there. Y'all motherfuckers is airborne with side effects including difficulty breathing and even full-blown hallucinations if you inhale that black. So knowing this, one of the first things that I would have packed were respirators for the whole squad. Let's see, splitting up also creates a dangerous situation because there's no guarantee that their phones will have service in every part of the factory. I mean, instead of using their phones, they should have packed some walkie-talkies or some personal whistles or some shit. Last, but definitely not least, I would have packed some pepper spray to give them a long-range, non-lethal option in case they were attacked. And also made sure that everyone had like a heavy-duty crowbar, because not only are they great for getting into locked areas, but they're also excellent self-defense tools if Popeye or any other creeps show up. Which brings us back to what I said before about Joey and his friends. They may not be coming for help, but they'll make perfect meat shields once the slaying starts. So once Popeye powers up and starts catching bodies, I wouldn't hesitate to throw those losers under the bus if it gave me a chance to skedaddle. Before leaving for the trip, Olivia here did some research into the factory's history. She explains that it used to be the area's main employer. They need to cover a lot of ground, so they decide to split up into groups, with with Katie staying behind to watch the cameras for any paranormal activity. Seth and Lisa haven't made it far when they find an empty can of spinach sitting on the shelf and laughing about how bad it smells. He disrespectfully launches it across the room when they hear something clattering across the floor behind them, and turning around, they see the same damn can of spinach rolling back out of the shadows. They end up blaming it on some pigeons, and Seth immediately starts acting like he would have thrown hands with the Sailor Man if he was real. But what he doesn't know is that Popeye has been listening the whole time, and he'd be more than happy to grant his wish. As for the others, they're still busy getting some B-roll footage for Dexter's documentary, but so far they haven't found anything unusual. Noticing that something is bothering Olivia, he tries asking the girl to share what's on her mind, but for now it seems like she'd rather keep it to herself. They set up one of the cameras in the main area of the building before going to investigate some nearby offices for any leads. Back at base camp, Katie here is just passing the time by scrolling through her Instagram, but she's so distracted that she doesn't notice Popeye appearing on the screen only moments after they're gone. Meanwhile, the realtor Margot comes back after realizing that she forgot some important paperwork. She notices the other cars parked outside and gets worried that the security guard doesn't seem to be around. It's pretty strange, but she's able to find the documents without any trouble. The only problem is, somebody doesn't want her property deal to go through. She's walking back to her car when she trips over something in the darkness, and looking down, she's horrified to discover that it's the security guard's headless body. That's when she hears an angry grunt from over her shoulder and looks up to see the Sailor Man standing just a few feet away. Terrified, the woman runs for her life, but there's nowhere that she can hide from Popeye's evil squint, and he just keeps power walking after her as she scrambles to find an exit. Eventually, she makes it to a door that's blocked by approximately 10 pounds of junk, but finally manages to force it open and lose him on the other side, or at least that's what she thinks. All of a sudden, she realizes that he's still holding onto her hair through the door, and pulling back, he starts tearing off the woman's scalp until the whole thing finally rips loose. Lifting her up, he carries the woman over to a trash compactor and locks her inside, and there's nothing that she can do besides scream for help as it slowly crushes her to death. That makes 5 down with 9 more to go. Alright, well, I can tell you this much. Popeye really doesn't like it when you talk about demolishing his house, but besides this just being another one of his brutal attacks, it actually gives us a better perspective into his own mental state. Yeah, let's go there. Notice how he never ventures off the property seeking new victims, and instead he only goes after people who are foolish enough to mess with his home. When he told Adrian, "I am what I am," it's like he was saying that he doesn't view himself as a monster, but rather like a guardian of the factory. Popeye doesn't want to kill, he wants to be understood, and recognizing this could be crucial if they want to make it out of here alive. The problem is that Dexter and his little group of cronies are still making critical mistakes, and one of their biggest ones is letting Katie here get lazy on the cameras. Although the mysterious spinach can and Olivia's vision in the window could be considered coincidental, the footage of Popeye passing by the camera is proof that the stories about the place are true, and more importantly, that their lives are all about to be in danger. Now, we learned from Grave Encounters that one of the most important jobs while ghost hunting is having someone constantly watching the footage on the cameras, because they'll usually be the first to know when the trouble starts. That's also exactly why they should have come prepared with walkie-talkies, because if Katie was doing her job and caught Sailor Man on tape, then she could warn her friends about the danger in time for them to get the hell out of there. Now, with that being said, it won't be much longer before they encounter Popeye for real, and that's when they need to use tactical empathy to avoid getting beaten to a pulp. As a negotiation strategy, tactical empathy means acknowledging the offender's perspective instead of resorting to direct confrontation. If Popeye starts coming after Dexter and his team, instead of trying to fight him, they should respectfully explain that they're not here to disrupt his home. In fact, they can even promise to use the money from the documentary to buy the factory themselves and keep it from getting torn down, giving him a reason to let them live that would actually make perfect sense from his perspective. It might be a long shot, but when you're fighting an opponent who's too strong to beat, sometimes finding common ground is the only way to keep from getting 86'd. Still clueless to the danger, Dexter and Olivia here are busy digging through some old files looking for any interesting tidbits for their film. But what he's really interested in is finding out more about his crush. Trying to ask questions without giving away that he likes her, he learns that she had a complicated childhood and decided to leave town as soon as she was old enough, but only came back because something happened with her family that she needed to take care of. That's when Dexter decides that it's finally time to shoot his shot, asking her out for dinner after they're done filming, but unfortunately our boy gets rejected, so it looks like he'll be staying in the friend zone for now. Changing the subject, she finds a locked cabinet and gets it open using a paperclip, figuring that there must be something important hidden inside. Back outside, Joey and his buddies finally pull up looking to put the beat down on Dexter. Still convinced that he's trying to get with his girl, the only one who's still holding out is Terry here, who's worried that the legends about the place might be true. But his friends hand him the old pistola and tell him to let that bad boy off if Popeye dares to show his face. As they're looking through the files, Dexter comes across a binder that reveals some absolutely game-changing news. It turns out that the place was shut down because of contaminated spinach that caused a neurological infection, but they were able to cover it up by paying off the local community. The same company who owns the factory also owns the newspaper in town, and Dexter realizes that they've just stumbled right into an entire spinach conspiracy. But if they're going to blow the lid off the case, then they're going to have to survive the night first. They're just about to kiss for the first time when they're interrupted by their friends, but their reunion does not last long before something else gets their attention. Just then, they notice that familiar smell of pipe smoke in the air, and the four of them decide to go check it out. The trail eventually leads them to a storage chamber with a strange message written on the walls, and as they read it, Olivia realizes that it's an old nursery rhyme that the adults used to tell them so that they would stay away from the docks. Thinking that this could be a good place for some Popeye activity, they set up another camera while Katie is watching them back at base camp. But she has no idea that the sailor man is actually coming after her first. The girl is still scrolling on her phone when she gets up to pour herself a cup of coffee, and while she has her back turned, Popeye enters the room and takes a look at the computer, becoming almost hypnotized when he notices Olivia on the screen. Turning around, she sees him sitting there and instantly takes off running, horrified that she knows the stories were true all along. Alright guys, you knew I was gonna say it, but it looks like shit just got real. And now that Popeye's finally going on the attack, Dexter and his friends are about to be in for the fight of their lives. These five won't stand a chance if they let themselves get picked off one at a time, but the good news is that they've just learned some extremely important information that could help them survive. Let's go back to the mysterious riddle that they found written on the walls. Remember that? That wasn't just a nursery rhyme, it was a survival guide for what exactly you need to do whenever Popeye shows up. The first one goes, when you smell the smoke from his pipe, he's near. And I think this one's pretty self-explanatory. Everyone knows that Popeye don't go nowhere without his signature corncob pipe. And although it significantly adds to his aura, it also takes away from his ability to use stealth. The human nose is surprisingly sensitive, able to pick up even trace amounts of scents that are lingering in the air. For strong aromas like pipe smoke, we can detect concentrations as low as 0.5 parts per billion, allowing them to smell Popeye coming from as far as 50 feet away. As soon as they get a whiff, they need to stop in place and take a big smell of the air in all four directions, staying away from wherever the scent is the strongest. They can also hold up a piece of cloth or release some dust to find the airflow direction, and this should tell them where he's coming from, giving them a reliable early Popeye detection system. And that's just general Boy Scout knowledge for you. Now not that I was a Boy Scout, now avoiding an encounter altogether is still the best bet, but if you're unlucky enough to run into him, that's when the next line comes into play, which is, he will kill you if you show fear. That last part is pretty important, and it's similar to a behavior known as a bluff charge that's often used by grizzly bears, which is another large territorial apex predator. When a grizzly bluffs, it's a test to see how well the other animal will respond. If they show weakness, this triggers a predatory response. However, if you try to challenge the bear, this will also get you killed for coming off as a threat. This is why Olivia's decision to run and Angus's decision to fight were actually the worst choices that you could possibly make. Now, if they see Popeye, what they should do is project a calm but firm, non-hostile aura, keeping their hands visible while backing away slowly to reassure him that they're not a threat, and whatever they do, never look him directly in the eyes. But the third line is where things get really interesting. He can get strength from a spinach can, because this reveals that Popeye got his superhuman powers by consuming the radioactive spinach. Knowing this, if all else fails and someone wants to be a hero, they could try to consume the spinach themselves, and it might give them the strength to confront Popeye in a battle of the Titans. You know, shout out Blackout26819, who actually dropped this in a comment on our episode of Popeye's Revenge. I can't believe that I didn't think of it at the time, and it is such a great idea. If Dexter here ends up in a battle with Popeye, then he could always try dipping into some contaminated spinach for himself. Running outside, the girl ends up bumping into Joey and his friends, but when she tries to warn them that Popeye is after her, they immediately assume that she's full of shit. Well, it doesn't take long before they get their proof, because that's when Popeye emerges from the shadows right behind them, and he's about to show these three idiots why they should never have come to his factory. Standing his ground, Jesse here pulls out a knife and shanks Popeye in the shoulder, but it's going to take a lot more than that to stop him. Staring down at the wound, he calmly looks back at the tweaker before grabbing both sides of his head and gouging out his eyes, brutally crushing the guy's skull with his bare hands until he finally snaps his neck all the way around. That makes 6 down with 8 more to go. Hearing the commotion, the others start running towards the source of the noise, while back outside, Popeye turns his attention to Terry next. The guy raises his weapon, but it's way too slow, and reaching out with the speed of a cheetah, Popeye snaps his wrist without even trying. Panicking, Terry runs for his life, leaving only Joey here still standing. But as the sailor man gets ready to unleash his fists of fury, he realizes that he's no match for the superior warrior, and decides that he better get out of there too. That leaves Katie completely defenseless, but lucky for her, Popeye moves on without adding her to the kill count. When the others get back to their base camp, they're worried to find that Katie has suddenly disappeared, so they decide to split up into pairs and start looking for their friend. As for Terry, he actually manages to make it back outside, locking the door behind him as he limps to the car, and struggling to get it started thanks to his injured hand. Finally, he turns on the engine and hits the gas, but for some reason the car will not move. And looking in the mirror, he realizes that Popeye is holding onto the back bumper, lifting the tires completely off of the ground. His only choice is to take off running deeper into the property, and this time he winds up being chased to the abandoned docks. But he's in such a hurry that he doesn't notice a nail-covered board lying in his path, and he accidentally steps right on top of it, driving the spike all the way through his foot. Yelping in pain, he has to stop to pull the nail out himself, but Popeye hears his screams, and they end up leading him straight to the perfect weapon. The bully tries to get away, but eventually there's nowhere left for him to run, and as he lies on the ground begging for mercy, Popeye lifts an anchor high into the air and brings it down straight onto his neck, brutally decapitating him with 2 powerful strikes. That makes 7 down with 7 more to go. That might have been one of the most embarrassing things that I've ever seen. These guys had Popeye outnumbered 3-1 plus a freaking pistol, and yet they got squad wiped within the first 30 seconds of the battle. The reason why they did so badly here is because they broke every single rule of survival when it comes to a Popeye encounter, right? One look at this guy tells you that it's not just a regular fight, it's a boss battle. So instead of attacking him one at a time, they either needed to run for their lives or use their numbers to their advantage. Like for example, while Popeye was distracted by Jesse, Terry could have hit him with a shot from his weapon or even aimed for the fire extinguisher that he was standing right next to, causing it to explode and spray chemicals all over the place that would disorient the sailor and give them a chance to run. Speaking of Terry, he had the best weapon that anyone could really ask for, but the way that he decided to use it was all wrong. All he had to do was stay back about 15 feet and emptied a clip, but he got so close that Popeye disarmed him before he could even fire a single shot. That injury to his wrist looked like he severed an artery, which means that the bleeding wouldn't have stopped on its own, no. And he'd likely lose consciousness within 5 to 10 minutes unless he got that shit under control. I mean, that is definitely not enough time to make it to the hospital. So instead of going for the car, his first priority should have been to wrap a clean cloth around the wound and apply a tourniquet above his elbow using a belt, electrical cord, or even his own shirt to stop the bleeding. By the time that Popeye finally caught up to him again, he was so injured that there was no chance of him putting up a fight. But if it were me, then my last hope would have been to roll off the dock into the water. The sailor might have jumped in after him, but then at least he'd still have a chance to swim for safety instead of getting added to the list of victims. Back inside the factory, Joey finds the pistol and starts looking for another way out, but that's when he hears someone coming towards him up a flight of steps. Thinking that it must be Popeye, he jumps out from the corner and fires off a round without waiting to confirm his target, only to realize that he's just shot Katie right in the kidney. Injured and terrified, the girl collapses in the corner, unable to believe what the hell just happened to her. But it looks like Popeye heard them too, because a moment later he comes walking up the steps, dragging the anchor behind him. Seeing him coming, Joey raises his weapon and pulls the trigger, but it jams, and he heroically decides to leave his girlfriend behind for the second time, running out of there like a total chicken just as Popeye closes in for the kill. After stumbling across one of the bodies, Seth and Lisa realize that they need to leave the factory and get help, only to discover that they've been locked inside. Needing a new plan, they think that they might be able to get a signal if they can reach the roof, but as they look back the way they came, they're terrified to see Popeye here already blocking the hallway, forcing them to choose a new path. Eventually, they find themselves on a catwalk high above the factory floor, and the only way to the roof is by climbing across a dangerous gap. Lisa tries to stop him, but Seth insists on trying to get across, and as he leans over the edge of the railing, he suddenly loses his grip, causing him to plummet all the way down to the level below. As luck would have it, he lands on a stack of boxes that breaks his fall, but his foot ends up caught in a fishing net. He starts pulling on the net, trying to get himself free, but running over to him, Lisa's relieved to see that he's still alive. But as they have their first kiss, the rebar poles suddenly come loose, falling straight down and impaling Seth through the stomach, which makes 8 down with 6 more to go. Scared and overwhelmed, the girl goes looking for her other friends when somebody grabs her from behind. It's Joey, but instead of looking for a way out, he says that he's going to find Popeye and get his revenge, leaving Lisa behind to fend for herself. With no idea where to turn, she's nervously making her way through the factory when the sailor man suddenly appears right in front of her, forcing her to run back the way that she came. Somehow she ends up right back on the catwalk where Seth was just killed, and with Popeye closing in, her only real choice is to try crossing the same deadly gap. When all of a sudden, she loses her balance and plummets straight down onto the same rebar spikes that killed her friend. That makes 9 down with 5 more to go. Wow. I mean, just wow! Remember before when I said that Terry's death was one of the most embarrassing things that I'd ever seen? Yeah, that was a mistake. This right here has to be without a doubt one of the top 5 most idiotic ways that I've ever seen 2 characters die. So Seth and Lisa, I gotta tell you, you two just f***ed up like big time. I mean, like, oh Jesus, where do I even begin? Oh, I know. How about when you two decided to even set foot in this death trap in the first place, Maybe I'm lame, but breaking into a haunted spinach factory where dozens of people who have mysteriously gone missing doesn't exactly sound like my idea of a good time. Sounds stinky and also dangerous, so if you two just wanted a chance to make out, then you should have just gone to the park or something like normal teenagers do instead. Now, I'll admit deciding to go for help right away was actually the best choice that you could have made, but unfortunately, it was also the last smart thing that you'd ever do. I've obviously never been to this factory myself, but I can tell you for sure that parkouring across a death drop is definitely not the only way out. This isn't a f***ing Mario level, it's a place of business, with doors and windows and fire escapes. The list goes on. Popeye wasn't even near you when Seth decided to go for it, which means that you all had the time in the world to circle back around and reach that roof access the way that you were supposed to. But Lisa deciding to try the exact same thing less than 5 minutes later is just the theory of Darwinism in full effect. Like, there's stupid and then there's whatever the f*** happened here. And when you're so dumb that an inanimate object takes you both out instead of the radioactive radioactive sailor man, that's when you know that you just f***ed up. Aww. While Popeye's busy with the others, Dexter and Olivia happen to find their way into his evil lair. I mean, the place is full of pictures of his family, and strangely, his wife looks exactly like Olivia here. They find the woman's ID card next to a stack of old files, and looking through them, they discover that she was actually a whistleblower who went missing after going to the press about the contamination at the factory. You see, over the years, Popeye went crazy as he searched for his wife while surviving off of cans of rotten spinach, until he eventually snapped and started attacking anyone who walked through the doors. Just then, they smell the telltale aroma of pipe smoke and realize that he's headed their way, forcing them to hide just as the sailor man enters the room. And after sitting down to crack open a can of radioactive spinach, he puts on his hat and heads back out, ready to find his next victim. As soon as the coast is clear, they go back to searching for their other friends, and it isn't long before they find them both impaled on top of a stack of boxes. A bit further up ahead, they find a passage that they think might lead out of the building, and since they don't smell any pipe smoke, they decide that it's safe to keep going. Dexter leads the way, but just when it looks like they're almost free, he pulls open the door only to find Popeye waiting for him on the other side. But the big fella just lifts him into the air like a child and snaps his wrist with a single squeeze. Only before he can deal the killing blow, Olivia shouts at the monster to leave her friend alone. Strangely, he actually listens, dropping Dexter back onto the floor as they slam the door in his face. With his arm badly broken, Olivia uses her surprise medical skills to reset the bone, putting him in a makeshift sling once it's back in place. It's enough so that it won't get any worse, but he still needs real medical attention like as soon as possible. Getting him back on his feet, they're limping for another exit when Popeye cuts them off once again. She asks the sailor if he knows who she is, and it turns out that Popeye here is actually her dad. Getting through to him, he reaches out a hand as a sign that he doesn't mean any harm, when all of a sudden, a shot rings out through the factory as he's hit straight in the chest. It's that asshole Joey back to cause more problems, and Olivia rushes after him as the sailor man turns and disappears deeper into the building. Catching up with Joey, they try to explain that Popeye's only crazy because of the radioactive spinach, but he threatens to kill them both if they try to stop him. Suddenly, that's when Popeye charges at him from the darkness. Stopping the fight, Olivia calls out to her father and tries one last time to reach whatever humanity he has left. But just as it looks like she's getting through to him, Joey holds a spinach can up to her neck, threatening to kill her as a way to get revenge for his friends. At the last second, the girl steps on his foot, buying herself a chance to escape. And as soon as she's out of reach, Popeye holds him down and rips his entire arm straight off of his body, before pummeling him with it over and over again until he's finally beaten to death. That makes 10 down with 4 more to go. Stumbling into the daylight, they're kind of relieved to find Katie still alive just as an ambulance arrives on the scene. When the police ask them what happened, they claim that they were attacked by a crazy guy who ran off to the docks. But only they knew the true story. Hours later, the owner, Mr. Alistair, is on the phone trying to drum up a new deal when he finds a can of spinach on the floor. And suddenly, Popeye appears directly behind him, crushing the man's skull in a final act of revenge. That makes 11 victims down with 3 survivors, and I'm pretty sure Dexter and Olivia will never look at a can of spinach the same way ever again. God damn it, son. Give me all the Popeye slashers. Keep them coming. I want to see Popeye slashers become an altruistic genre. Like, step the up and give me your best Popeye slasher today. And if I happen to have missed anything in this particular episode, would you be so kind as to let me know what they was down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like and subscribe, and check out the How to Beat playlist for more videos just like this one. I'm the guy. We'll see you in the next video, and have a damn good day.